Hello, everyone, and welcome to day 8 here at Atlantic Council Live from COP26. I'm Reed Blakemore, Deputy Director at the Atlantic Council Global Energy Center, and I'm here with Alex Grant from Jade Cove Partners. Alex, a big part of what we talked about here this morning was mineral supply chains and how important they're going to be to the goals and actions that we're talking about over at COP. What were your big takeaways from our conversation this morning?
What were my big takeaways? I think there was maybe one kind of reinforced opinion and observation that I've made over the last couple of years, which is that people in the kind of OEM and EV space don't at all understand their supply chains, and they should want to. So a lot of these car manufacturers are now kind of talking the talk around kind of sustainable battery mineral supply, but having in reality no idea of how hard it is to build those types of projects, whether they're high or low environmental impact or social impact for that matter. So I guess my reflection on that observation that I've made a number of times now from different folks, not just today, is the importance and the value of EV manufacturers to essentially, hire mining engineers, hire chemical engineers, right? Like hire technical folks who can educate them and help them make the right decisions around supply. Yeah. Whether that be, investing in minerals projects or getting offtake contracts or whatever else. I think that's really critical.
Yeah, and we talked a little bit about the human capital piece of this, right? And that we need to build a narrative around the fact that mining and metals is exciting. It's a hugely important part of what we're trying to accomplish with our climate, but yet it just isn't getting the level of attention that it in some ways it deserves. I mean, how do we seize upon the amount of excitement from a younger generation on climate and translate that into building the infrastructure and producing the materials needed for us all to have that EV, to see those offshore wind turbines, to have the household solar, etc.
Yeah. I think the minerals industry needs kind of new narratives that will attract young and smart people. Yeah. I think that industries that kind of I'm a part of now have historically done some crappy things to people in developing countries, right? And I don't work at those companies, like kind of say whatever I want, but at those companies. But the narrative now in battery metals is very strong, right? So if lithium demand is going to grow 10x in the next 12 years or whatever numbers you want to use, that means that 92% of lithium supply in 2030 or 2035 or whatever doesn't exist yet, right? So we have this incredible opportunity to build that supply chain using kind of more sophisticated technologies that can enable lower environmental impact, reduce kind of land use requirements for making certain quantity of minerals like lithium chemicals or whatever have you, and just radically reduce the environmental impacts of making those chemical products. And in terms of kind of attracting young, smart, passionate people to this industry, all I really need to say is if you want to have impact, if you really want to be in a space where you can help influence decisions and change minds and kind of guide allocation of capital, come to mining and minerals and metals, right? Like don't go to battery recycling. There's already so many smart people working on battery recycling. It's so overcrowded, right? I mean, they're doing a great job recycling scrap from battery manufacturing. That's absolutely necessary, but we have to reduce the entropy of a very large number of lithium atoms before battery recycling starts to really kick in and kind of substitute supply from primary resources. So those types of folks entering these industries it's huge, and I will report that it's an awesome industry to work in. You get to go to natural places as part of work, and you're kind of assuming the mantle for all of humanity and our negotiation with nature itself, right? Like you're taking the responsibility to as selectively as possible, extract these metals out of natural resources, and trying to minimize the impacts of doing so, right? And you're doing that for everybody, right? You're not just doing it for a mining company, you're doing it for everybody, right? Like, my phone's got some lithium atoms and some cobalt atoms in it, so does yours, so there's everyone's, right?
I mean, we're filming around, we're surrounded by
it at this point. Yeah. Metal atoms that were dug out of a hole somewhere, right? So, yeah, if you're like, an environmentalist or an ecologist or, someone interested in hydrogeology or anything like this, like, you are wasting your potential by working at like some think tank in New York or San Francisco or London. Honestly,
I mean, I'm working at a think tank in DC, so I'm assuming that's okay, right?
Well, it didn't say this.
There's a policy involved. That's what we need to cover. One thing actually I do want to ask you, though, I think you touched on this. It's the innovation side, right? There's so much opportunity to introduce innovative business models, new technologies, strictly into how we think about retrieving minerals. And this is actually closely related to what you're doing at JCO. So I'd love for you to talk a little bit more about, what does the innovation, and it's not quite a horizon because these things are here right now. What does the innovation landscape look like? And how is that opening new opportunities to build sustainable mineral supply chains?
Yeah, I mean, there's a ton of interesting technology development happening in lithium and other battery metals right now. There was a kind of sentiment today that there was no disruption and no innovation in mining. That's just flatly, incorrect. Like, they just need to follow me on Twitter or something to like actually learn about what's going on. It's because they're just not paying attention, right? But it's definitely happening. Like lithium has a very kind of special opportunity associated with it, just based on its chemistry. Really, most nickel and cobalt and probably a lot of graphite will have to be dug out of the ground from solid resources. But because lithium is so soluble in water and is happy being dissolved with other salts, it means there's a number of very large brine deposits in South America and North America. I mean, really all around the world in different forms. And because lithium is already dissolved in these deposits, you can take lithium kind of out of that brine selectively and make lithium chemicals with a concentrate from using a direct lithium extraction technology. So there's projects in North America and Europe and kind of all around the world advancing these direct lithium extraction technologies. I co-founded a company that has raised really significant capital in California to advance a DLE approach. But globally, I'm tracking like between probably 70 or 75 different DLE approaches. Like, really, it's vast. I mean, just today, a big French steel company called Eramet announced that they were bringing in a Chinese mining company to co-invest in a DLE project in Argentina, right? Like, the amount of really material, real world project development and deployment happening is really amazing, right? So kind of like going back to what I was saying before about, kind of the end consumer or the OEM and the battery manufacturer, like not really spending enough time and energy to understand that stuff. Like the lithium industry will make lithium chemicals in a way that is most attractive to their customers or potential future customers, right? So it's so important that OEMs and battery manufacturers learn about their supply chains and learn about the opportunities, right? So there's one lithium company in particular that produces bromine in Arkansas in the U.S. And there's a lot of lithium in that brine, right? They're dumping that lithium back underground. They could probably make like 10 or 20,000 tons per year lithium carbonate equivalent just from processing a brine that's already flowing.
And we just have to seize these opportunities.
We just have to seize them. And but none of their customers are going to them and being like, hey, why are you not taking this lithium out? Because if you can make that much lithium from salty water that's already flowing in Arkansas, you've eliminated the need for an entire open pit in Western Australia or Europe or Canada or North Carolina or Nevada or wherever. And we're going to certainly need to dig a whole bunch of open pits to make all these battery metals. That's undeniable. So the question isn't eliminating mining. The question is kind of reducing the amount we need to do, right? Because digging a big hole always has severe local impacts where that hole is, right? It's unavoidable. So those impacts can be mitigated, but not unless kind of battery manufacturers and OEMs start asking the right questions.
Definitely. And I think we today's conversation was a good start to starting to ask those questions. And of course, it's Monday now, we have a week left of COP26. I think we've seen a lot of interesting progress on the ambition for clean energy deployment. But so far, I think the minerals conversation still needs to evolve. And so as you look out to the next week, right, and possibly, beyond COP26, what are in your mind are the key lessons that we need to take forward? And what's the big next step that we need to make as an energy transition community to actually bring the minerals to market and provide the materials necessary to do the things we're laying out for ourselves here at COP26?
Mm-hmm. There's a number of huge next steps next to you, of course, but I would say one big step that needs to be taken that is kind of sort of a little bit being taken, but not nearly as much as people talk about it being taken, is investing in battery metal extraction and conversion outside of China. And I don't mean this in like there's potentially like kind of problematic nationalistic things kind of like lurking underneath that kind of conversation, but I think it's a reality that if you want to ensure that those lithium chemicals or nickel chemicals or whatever have you are produced in a way that that you can be proud of, right? And like you can put in your sustainability report, like, hey, like I'm Ford or whoever have you, and I've invested $75 million into this nickel project in Minnesota or Brazil or wherever have you, that has taken 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 like deliberate technical decisions to reduce their environmental impacts. That like people talk a lot about doing that, and they think it's just going to like materialize like kind of magically, but it definitely will not, right? So unless kind of the buyers of these metals and chemicals really start digging in and making real investments in real meat space, they're not going to have the opportunity to write that page in their sustainability report in 2028 or whatever.
And if it's anything, we're proving the demand is there right now. I think the demand is there. We just need, we got to start putting money on the table for these type of goals.
The demand is there. I mean, there's a spodumene mine, lithium mineral mine in Western Australia, or maybe it's in the Northern Territory, wherever in Australia, that was on care and maintenance until last week, right? Lithium chemical spot price in China right now is at an all-time high. It's literally never been more expensive to buy a kilo of lithium carbonate. So it's like, holy smokes, like why? What's going on here?
There's somebody's not making the connection.
Someone's not making a connection, or someone's like asleep at the wheel. But it kind of emphasizes the importance of in the industry what's called junior miners, right? So these are basically like startups, and mostly in like Vancouver and Perth and Australia and Canada respectively, who are interestingly kind of publicly listed on these cheap to list stock markets, who try new things and go looking for new deposits. I used to actually be very skeptical of junior mining companies, but I've kind of come around to some extent and realized that it's the only way that you can try new things, right? And it's the exact same. It's a perfect parallel to kind of technology development in the United States, right? Like startups building things and incumbents don't typically.
So that's really, I mean, those are the three. That's where the innovation is happening, and we need to take advantage of that and encourage that. So if I'm taking 3 lessons away from what you're saying, it's that, hey, we need to have a serious conversation from the demand side in terms of what our expectations are for a sustainable supply chain, and act upon it and invest in that supply chain. We need to understand appropriately how big the scale of demand is. We need to appreciate the innovation opportunity, particularly out of the junior miners that you mentioned. And then finally, folks got to get excited about these mining opportunities. This is a space where I just laid out 4 reasons why people should be excited. And whether you're an academic considering a mine engineering degree, or a think tanker like myself who wants to get involved in the policy side, or an investment banker who's recognizing that there is money, that there is a capital need and a capital signal being put on the table there. Everybody has a role to play, and we all got to get excited. So with that, Alex, it's a pleasure to have you.
Thanks for having me.
That's it for day 8 here at live from COP26. I'm Reed Blakemore. We have a number of great conversations happening for the next couple days here. So signing off and hope to see you again soon.